Outlay Committee. And why don't we start on our left and introduce ourselves? Mark?
Mark Kelleher, Representative Finance Committee.
Karen Doucette, also Finance Committee Representative.
Rich Larius from the Town Administrator.
Martha Donovan from the Select Board.
Ann Tucker from the Planning Board.
Okay. We all have the agenda. I want to skip to new business Part B, and we need to approve the minutes of January 20th of 2021, March 17th of 2022, June 17th of 2022, September 9th of 2022, and September 30th of 2022. Do I have a motion?
Can I ask a procedural question?
Go right ahead.
I have a couple of comments on the minutes.
Sure.
Do I do that before or after?
Well, we're doing it now, so.
Okay. Sorry to be a pain. On the minutes for March 17th, 2022,
Mm-hmm.
under section B, the second paragraph, there's in quotes a word vented. I think it should be vetted. I don't think, it probably was in quotes because somebody didn't know what the word was or didn't hear it properly. Is that okay to make?
Joe's got the answer.
So what I would suggest procedurally is the members could say that they have suggestions or edits or things like that, that you would send to the chair for staff to correct.
Okay,
And based on those
I'm good.
additions, that you could approve them.
Okay, I'll send them.
That way you get to expedite.
Okay, given the change, can I take a vote on acceptance?
So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for January 20th, 2021, March 17th, 2022, June 17th, 2022, September 9th, 2022, September 30th, 2022, with any comments, corrections sent to the chair.
Okay,
Second.
okay. Can I have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, approved.
Rich, quick follow-up question. I have formerly been informally taking notes and doing minutes. Should I still continue to do that, or I see there's somebody who is actually taking minutes now? So that's a question.
That's a good question, and I don't know procedurally, Joe, or we have, I know you have someone listening or hearing the tape afterwards.
So yes, we still have, we being administration department, still have access to a board secretary
Mm-hmm.
who still has a bandwidth to do that for you folks. There will be a discussion on your agenda, as you can see, of going forward on that. So it's really the preference of you folks, if you want to have the member do it, or the member work with that individual, or just have the individual do it.
Mark, can we continue?
We'll continue it. Yeah,
Okay, and I have you, in fact, I presented to the FinCom what we do. You weren't there, but Karen was last week, this week, I don't know what week we're in. But anyway, I have you down as acting secretary.
Okay, fine.
Thanking you for the fine work that you're doing on that. And really, it's a backup job in case of, we're missing something. We got it. So that's a good question. And so we'll take care of that. The other thing I want to cover is, before we start, gentlemen, okay? There's an issue about having a premise visit. I think it's 204 Sisson Road. And you guys asked for it.
Yeah.
Talking with the town administrator, I think we've gone through this procedurally, how it should work. We can have the visit, and then the best way is follow it up with the meeting. So we have a meeting on if I'm not mistaken, November the 5th
7.
at 10 o'clock. Does that sound right?
The 5th, I think, is a Saturday.
Yeah,
Oh.
I think it's.
We have one on the 28th and then of this month, and then one on the 4th of November.
Okay, the 4th.
Okay.
Anybody want to do the 5th?
Wait,
meeting?
and
No,
then
wait a minute.
the-
I thought the 4th was not.
So if you see the agenda, there's a double asterisk that indicates This
The
is
next
what
meeting.
staff had received from Chair that
November
is
7th.
supposed to correspond with what you folks provided.
Okay, November 7th. Oh, the calendar thing. I'm talking about things you, I sent out and we all replied back on what's the availability. And
I won't be here on the 7th.
using my Excel spreadsheet, it appears that November 7th, 4 out of the 5, I guess Karen, you're not available?
Right, I'll be in the air.
Okay, so we're gonna use the 7th, and we'll work it to get a walkthrough, let's say at 8:30?
Okay, prior, on the 7th?
Yes.
Excuse me, Rich, the meeting.
Oh, it's at 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock, yeah.
Okay, so why don't we have a walkthrough at 11:30?
Okay.
And then we meet here at 1 o'clock. Does that work for everybody? For the 4 of us? And that walkthrough is, and FinCom actually asked for it, what do you want to walk through?
Well, we've only, to my knowledge, and I'm speaking for myself, we've only walked through the.
West Wing.
The West Wing, correct.
Right.
So I'd like to see the East Wing. and maybe some of the
1935.
What's that?
You want to see 1930, the year 1930?
Well, yeah, in the back it's normal, but even some of the mechanical
Okay,
systems,
let-
just to get a good thing.
To make life easy, and I know we stop every time we go there, and we talk for 15 minutes, then we walk 3 more steps, and we stop, and we talk for 20 more minutes, and then we stop, and we keep on walking 15 feet, and eventually, after an hour and a half, we've gone 45 feet. So to make life easy, we're gonna meet at 11 o'clock, okay?
Okay.
So we basically have an hour and a half window to go 135 feet. Good enough? That work? Good.
And are we still on for next week's meeting then at, on the 28th?
I'll see it here.
Okay,
Yeah.
I had originally penciled that in, but
Looks like
One
these
replaced
days.
another, or are we meeting on the 28th?
I also have it.
Yes, that was confirmed at your last meeting.
Okay, we're just
What-
checking.
Yep, what the agenda's trying to indicate is what you've pushed forward. for-
Yeah, we have 2 agendas here. One agenda is to get this walkthrough through.
Got
The
it.
other agenda is to meet all the requests as we're doing today. So the 28th is what the meeting would be like today, okay?
Yep.
And we'll be getting an email out on that.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could, you've
Sure.
set a site visit for 204 Sisson Road for 11 a.m.,
That either.
Yeah, if we
November
could.
7th? All right. I will not be available,
Okay,
but I will be available for your meeting when you have discussion on it,
okay.
but staff will be available.
Okay, so let us know, or let me know who's going to be meeting us at 204.
Sure, my expectation right now is it would be the facilities maintenance manager, the director of cultural affairs, the recreation director. I can add anyone else beyond that
Okay.
that you want.
So it's at 11 o'clock and it'll go to 12:30,
Sure,
okay?
thank you.
So we'll be getting it something so that you can put on your calendars, but right now, it's that. Okay, so we've taken care of that, and we've done the meeting minutes. We've talked about there's a potential funding for a board secretary. Mark, thanks for whatever you're doing now. Okay, so to make this move quickly, it's going to end today at 11:30, okay? We have a drop dead time. I have a drop dead time, 11:30, unless somebody wants to take my job, you're more than welcome. But 11:30, we're ending. And we're gonna start off because, traffic is building up, and we want the police department in and out. You never know, you know? You gotta get that. Okay, so you gentlemen would come up, and we've got you on our spreadsheet. And if you'd introduce yourselves, because we have 4 new members.
Morning, Dave Gilmet, Chief of Police.
Morning, Kevin Considine, Deputy Chief.
Morning, guys.
Morning.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, good morning, Joe Powers, Town Administrator. Meaning I'm technically with these folks and these folks to help you folks with the discussion.
Chief?
Good to go?
Good to go.
All right. Kevin, you're on. Kevin has done all the legwork.
Good morning. I don't know where we want to take this or how we want to take this, but,
From the beginning.
so looking at FY '24, is that where we want to?
Yeah.
Okay, so for capital for FY '24, we have 2 items on capital. I'll take the small one first. It's ballistic plate carriers. And just for the benefit of the newer members, obviously, I'll explain a little of those. Those are ballistic vests that are kept in each vehicle of the department, from the chiefs on down to the animal control officer. So those are ceramic plates that go into a vest that wear over the officer's soft body armor that they have either under their shirt that they wear daily. So the good news about these is we purchased these 5 years ago for the first time, 5 or 6 years ago. They have a 5-year warranty. So FY '24 is the end of their warranty. That's the purpose of this. The good news on this for the cost is the existing carriers that we have for them are good. They have no date for expiration. So it's literally just taking the old ceramics out and putting the new ceramics in. The purpose of these, again, to wear over the officer's soft body armor is in the case of particularly rifle fire. The officer is not protected with any soft body armor. If you're talking about AR-15 or anything similar to that, high-powered weapons. So these protect the officer from high caliber fire. Any questions on those?
It's enough to replace all of them in the department?
Yes, yes.
How many?
Plus some extras in case the ceramics break.
How many are there?
25. Yep. So that's ballistic plate carriers. The next one actually covers a program for 5 years, payments for FY '24, '25, and '26. They're spread out. And this is, yep.
Because they're spread out, what part of 45.5 are the vests and what's the other
So 8,000
is,
for the vests.
yeah,
And for FY '24, it's 43,000 for our taser replacement program
okay,
for the first year.
okay.
So the tasers that we wear, again, these have a 5-year warranty. We will, in FY '24, be out of warranty that year. This is a 5-year program that covers everything under this program with Axon, which is, they make tasers. So a lot is covered in this program, including replacement cartridges for the tasers, any repairs, any training cartridges. Everything is covered under this 5-year program. The payment plan is for FY '24, '25, and '26, all at $43,000, and that covers the 5 years. This is very similar to the plan that we are working off right now. So 5 years ago, we started this program for the first time, and we're on our last year of that 0 payment, and then we'll kick back into '24 for new tasers. What's important about the tasers to remember is they're electronics. They get rained on, they get snowed on, they're on the officers' belts all the time. They're a very sensitive piece of electronics, first and foremost. So the technology is changing every 5 years for these. And you can just imagine some electronic problems you have with your phone. I'm sure most people replace their phones after 5 years because you have issues with them or glitching. This is no different. The most important part of tasers, and this is why we got them over 10 plus years ago, is strictly officer safety and suspect safety. It's a less lethal form of subduing a subject. You don't have to go hands-on, and it's safe for both. So they've proven very effective for us, and it's a great tool for us.
Questions? I've got one. Evan, you said that part of the 45 is 43 for tasers?
Correct. Well, part of the 51 total. So 43,000 for the first year of tasers,
Yeah,
and then 8,000 for plate carriers.
so that comes out to be 51,
Correct.
and we've got 45.5. So we gotta change that. Correct?
So,
You don't have what I
Yeah,
have?
we're
No.
not looking at that.
Okay,
It's on the summary sheet.
okay.
yeah, and I believe the town administrator, that number is correct. I think I'm looking at my first edition of
Okay,
my spreadsheet.
okay.
Was there a savings because of the carriers? Is that the difference?
Yeah, there was the savings on the carriers, and then the tasers went up. So that what you're looking at is accurate.
45.5, whatever.
Okay.
Okay, so you speak of 43 a year for the tasers?
Correct.
Okay, we're showing 18, 18, 12, 6. So,
No, I think it's 18, 18, 18. It's just buried in that 45.5, isn't it? 'Cause it's about 24,
That
25,
actually
and
is the
26.
last, that was the last 5-year payments on those. That was what they were, 18, 18,
okay, well, it's
26.
not reflecting your new, are there new payments starting in 25?
Starting 24, it's a whole new
24.
program.
Okay, are there new payments that are gonna be carried over in 25, 26, and 27?
No, 24,
20.
Yes,
25,
yes,
26.
yes.
Yep.
New payments.
These all are new payments. This is a brand new week,
I
brand new
understand, I
plan.
understand that. What's reflected here, and I just want to get it straight, of what we're seeing, is that I'm looking at 18 in 25, 18 in 26, and 12.6 in 27.
So that's a question for Joe.
So my question is, what are they? Because we're not reflecting anything new if these are old.
There's other capital requests.
Joe, do you see what I'm saying?
I do. The problem is I'm having network connectivity to my electronic version.
Okay, we're not going to stop you, okay? We will address it. Can you tell me what the number is for 25, 26, and 27?
And 24.
He's already got it in the 45. He's got 43 in tasers.
Yep, so
So my number is, what is it in 25?
25 is 43,
Okay,
26 is 43,
okay,
27 and 28,
yep,
0.
okay. And that's reflecting the new tasers.
The new plan, the new tasers, correct.
Okay, so actually, for the sake of argument, we're talking about $130,000 for tasers. The
Correct.
new tasers, okay? It's a 5-year plan, but paid in 3.
Correct.
Okay. We'll take care of it, okay? 5-year plan, paid in 3 at 130K tasers. Got it. Once we get up and running, is the IT department coming in today? Can we have them fix this? Tony,
No, it's not an IT problem, it's an operator error.
oh, Do we have any questions for the police department,
Not for those two things.
for anything? They're
We
here.
have other capital requests, so I'm trying to, yeah, so one of them is for it says police department IT, 20 grand, and to do the audio visual, and 25.
Mhm.
Are you gonna talk about that?
Yep, so I was just making sure
We're good.
we're good
Good
with
with
this. Okay. So the next one is for FY '25. So again, the 43 for the tasers.
Right,
The next one is the Emergency Operations Center, upgrade the audio visual at $20,000. This again was on the plan before. That audio visual system, if you're not familiar with it, the building was built in 2009. We're having some serious deficiencies with it. I equate it to, especially during the tornado and the time that I was in that room for 3 months with the town administrator and the health director during COVID. Basic example, we can't do web conferencing with the way that room's set up. It's not technologically supported for that. Right now, it's a whiteboard with a monitor on the ceiling. What we're looking for is to upgrade that to a flat screen TV and able to do web conferencing. That will bring that room up for capabilities to run an operation during emergency procedures that we have, where all the department heads are in that room. But also it will help, we do a lot of training in that room for our personnel and outside personnel and town groups. So just upgrade that room is what we're looking for.
So it gets you the TV and what else?
It will get you the TV, a stand with all the capabilities of running that TV. Web conferencing, so it will have cameras, so
Yeah.
people can sit in the audience and you can see them. Right now, it has none of that. We'll also have the capability of, there's individual desks with already existing plugs on the floor. So it'll enable somebody in a class, for instance, if they have their laptop, they can plug into the floor and they can share their screen and we can just run things like that. So very important for department heads for that reasoning.
Yeah, who makes it operational?
So we have, you mean the company that
No, in other words, you have somebody there that's gonna,
we do? We're fortunate for IT. We rely on the town's IT, but as well as we have two in-house persons to deal with that, one from the fire and one from the police.
okay.
And
Yep.
that's fiscal year '25?
Correct.
Let me ask you, and we have, it's called technology replacement, and it's at 18, but we're saying it's 20.
It is
Is
20.
there any reason why this couldn't be moved forward to 24? I mean, we're in a predicament now where every day could be an emergency kind of day.
Yeah.
And just historically, what we have.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that. Yes, in our eyes, the chiefs and our eyes, is the timeframe is very important for that. But recognizing financials for the town, we were also trying to spread things out as well and have that discussion with.
Well, I think it's being used departmentally, from my understanding of what, Kevin, you just said, okay? That you bring department heads in, forget your training. In other words, in time of emergency, I think, we're talking 20 grand. You know, we've said that the capital plan normally, well, I don't know what the charter says. It's gotta be 50 grand, nothing less, nothing more.
Exactly.
But you haven't hit the 50 threshold, but if I hit you with the 20, with the 43, you know, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt, I just want to let you know, I wanted to add on after you're done.
Okay. So my recommendation is that I put the 20 in 24, because we're talking emergency management here. And I think the town needs to be at the leading edge to make things happen. I understand training, and I understand, you know, what has to be done from a fiber standpoint. But I'm really concerned is that if you wait another year or 18 months and you really need it, it's something that should be put in 24.
Is it putting you at risk, though? I mean, you can function now?
We can function now, limited. I mean, the web conferencing is the big issue.
But if we had an emergency today, if we had another tornado or whatever,
Yes, yep,
you're fine?
yeah. And the 18, just to explain that, the 18 to the 20 is obviously, that was the jump from last year,
Yeah.
the 2 grand.
Okay. Joe?
Thank you. So there's a few ways that we could have looked at this relative to the plan. We're talking about a room in a building, so there could have been a facilities maintenance element to it. We chose not to go that route. But as you'll see on your existing plan, you still have the yellow band in the middle of the plan, which is information technology. So you've heard the deputy talk about that. We're incredibly fortunate to not only have the director of IT that we have, but also to have 2 resources over in public safety that can help with that. But this is something that we could incorporate in information technology insofar as the public safety individuals have advocated for information technology equipment. That is something that our IT director would work with them on the procurement, and it's also something we could tie back to Channel 18. So for me, I appreciate the discussion about moving it up because, to the earlier question, yes, these folks are always ready no matter what. I will tell you that when we had a tornado, that operations was impacted as far as being able to get there. So the EOC is wherever public safety and other decision makers determine it to be. All things being equal, we want it to be there. So I want to let the public know that no matter what we're dealing with, we're always going to have the resources to mobilize. We're always going to have the resources to be online. But I think it is beneficial to look at it in fiscal year '24 because I know that hopefully for your next meeting, you at least have the applications that the IT director and I are working on for IT, so we get that into the plan. So we could bump it up, but we could also put it under the IT plan. They're advocating for it, but it is part and parcel of the procurements that we would do for IT.
Is it gonna be double dipping? Is it gonna show in IT as an expense?
So I would show it under the IT capital
So it's
plan
gonna-
relative to a request for public safety.
Okay, so
Because the
my,
reality is, these gentlemen could have presented it, Chief LeBlanc and Deputy Chief Thornton could have presented it. The EOC is used by everybody in public safety. There's only one group that could be and should be asking for tasers and ballistic helmets and all of that, and that's these two gentlemen. But technology is a town-wide need, even in this instance where it's supporting them. So it wouldn't be double dipped, but it would be understood that as we're enhancing our information technology in the town, we're partnering with public safety to make sure they're covered.
okay. Historically, I'd like to see this in '24, okay, move it up. And then it's gonna be backed by IT, and let IT say '24 is a good year, or I've got applications coming up, or whatever IT does, and it's gonna impact your '24 request. So in the end, when you do the evaluation of both, we're satisfied that at least you've asked for it immediately. I think me as chairman here, I'm asking for it immediately, because I think it's immediate, and we'll just work it from there. Is that fair enough?
Thank you.
Okay. You got some others.
27, ballistic helmets. You should be showing, well, the correct number is 18,000.
Yep.
That is, again, similar to the plate carrier vests. These are in every cruiser. As opposed to a 5-year, these helmets have a 7-year. So on fiscal year '27, we'll be at the 7-year warranty. These are similar to stop any ballistic rounds, even from, especially from high-powered weapons. So this goes part and parcel with ballistic vest and helmet. So when officers are going to a scene of potentially those type of calls, those high-risk, dangerous calls, they will get out and they will put on both that extra vest and the helmet.
Okay. I think we need, Joe, to, when you get availability of your, we've got to run your requests against what's being put down in the spreadsheet. Because what we're seeing is that 18 you just spoke about, it's there, and then you put the 43 on top of it. And that's not reflected.
It was 18 and it said 12.6 in FY '27.
I understand that, but the 43 is not there.
Kevin, do you want to
But it
see?
shouldn't be,
There's
it
no-
shouldn't
So-
be in
Take a look.
If they're
2027.
paying for it in 3
He
years,
said it's
not.
3
I
years.
understand
Take a look
that,
on the
but
police department.
where the 18s are, there's 43 on top of it, and that's not
43 plus.
reflected.
So I can answer that very easily. That 18 and then 12.6
Yes,
are the past TASER program. Those were the payments for those past fiscal years.
are they still due?
18, 19, 20, no.
They're done.
Those are done, but those do correspond with our past payments. I'm not sure why they're,
They're showing as to be paid.
I think
that-
the issue,
that's
I think
the-
the issue is that the worksheets aren't coming to the top correctly in the summary spreadsheet, Joe. That's the problem.
I think there was a scrivener's error much like the operator error. So
Yeah,
I'll
there's an issue
I will
between
pull that person aside and speak to him.
your request and how it's reflected in what you requested to us.
So when it gets updated, the numbers will
Get it.
get corrected and the
Gotcha.
timing that we just talked about.
It happens on this side. So if your request, it's showing payments to be made, and you're saying they don't exist.
We're paid.
Okay, so they have to come off the spreadsheet. What's not showing is the 43 that being picked up every year.
Yep.
Also is not showing are helmets of whatever number that is. Is that part of the 43?
No,
Right, how much are the helmets?
18.
And that's what screws up, because 18 exists, but this is the 18 past, and there's a new 18.
Yeah.
Okay,
All we're looking for in 27 is $18,000.
Right.
Got it.
we'll figure it out.
So they have four requests.
Right. Okay,
And finally,
yes,
FY '28,
yes.
$18,000 for replace 2 all-terrain vehicles, ATVs. And that is the only request for '28 at this time.
And that's other vehicles-related equipment.
Correct.
That's not police cruisers.
No.
And it's 18,000, how much?
18,000.
Again, 18,000
That's their favorite number.
in '28.
This repeats, yeah.
It won't be in FY '28, but that's what it is now.
Okay, and this is vehicles.
Right.
Okay.
35.
We'll work through this and get it, okay?
Good stuff.
We got somebody new that's reading your sheets and trying to input it. We'll get it done. Anything for police cruisers or,
Just going back to the ATVs, just for some knowledge, they're by FY '28, they will be 30 years old. Like everything else, and we say this every year, and it is true, our Department of Public Works does a phenomenal job to keep these things running, but it's time to replace them in FY '28.
So,
Cruisers, I will, I think our town administrator would like to start that conversation.
are we
Well, no, the
expense?
town administrator would like to say that the chief and I, if I may, remain flummoxed by, we don't know where to put it. We'll put it anywhere you want. We were told that in years past it was in the operating budget,
Yes,
and in years past it was in capital. Whatever the, pardon the expression, because I love this phrase, the powers that be, which is not me, that would be Board of Selectmen, FinCom, and Capital. Wherever you want it to be, we want to cover it. But when we tried to adhere to what we understood to be past practice, the Board of Selectmen rejected that. Am I?
I think they moved it to capital last year, yeah.
Yeah.
oh, did
They
they?
moved it out of
Expense,
our, yeah,
operating.
out of our operating budget too.
The word was, it was an operating, because they're thrown away after 3 to 5 years. They're
Right, exactly.
totally,
It's a reoccurring.
it's a reoccurring, and,
It doesn't have the durable nature of
Right.
most capital items.
and basically it would be depreciated 3 to 5
Right.
years, and it's worth nothing. and
do you
it's
recall
just-
their justification for moving it?
That were-
It may have been the Board of Selectmen's justification.
Oh,
That's what I'm
was.
asking.
It
He
was.
just
Yeah,
said
it
it was
was-
the Board of Selectmen,
yeah.
so I'm asking
Yeah.
you, like,
I don't want, I was assuming it's because, the capital items, I guess, get looked at a little bit closer, and I think if I remember what, Chairman McCaskill said, is it belonged more in capital than within an operating budget. That's all I really have to offer.
Yeah,
on
I
that.
mean,
It's been
that's-
done both ways.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
And
so my question is, the ATVs for,
that's different.
yeah, right, but they're vehicles, I'm calling them vehicles. They're not in here right now, right?
Right.
And none of the vehicles are in here right now, right?
The ATVs are in FY '28.
18.
It's not showing
It's
that.
not
In
showing
the
here.
erroneous report that I have been
We have a
perpetuating.
sheet, it's just.
Oh, I see, right here. Okay, I got it, okay, sorry.
And the ATV would have a
But the
longer,
cruisers are not in here right
they
now.
wouldn't have a longer life. They would have a longer life.
Because they're 30 years right now, yeah.
Right, their cruisers they're basically trashed after 5
Right,
years.
right.
I'm using the word trash in a positive sense. It's just, okay.
Mr. Chairman, if,
Yes, sir.
if it helps the matter, the police department still needs cruisers,
Right.
and we, administration and public safety, are going to account for them. We'd be more than happy to add it to this plan, run it up the flagpole to see if it's capital, and this year might be the year that it's operating. Bottom line is, there's going to be a commitment to cruiser replacement, because it's absolutely necessary.
How many are you talking about?
3.
This year, 24?
yeah.
Okay, 3 times 50, 40?
Right now, and vehicles are difficult, but right now, right around 50,000.
Okay, so you're talking 150, you'd
Yes.
fall into this category. The only exception is depreciation and the life of the asset.
Again, and I always like, especially for the benefit of the new members, you look out in this parking lot right now, these are all police cruisers out there. Water department's had them over the years, highway department has them, natural resources, harbor master. So the intent, it helps everybody. So we get new cruisers that we need, and then they get bounced down, and you'll see a Crown Victoria out here. We still have a Crown Victoria. They still have a Crown Victoria, but that car is old, but it's working, and it's a great use for the town and for the purchase.
Well, you guys know what the mechanicals of this is, and so whatever the numbers are, it's got to be reflected somewhere, either as an operating expense or a capital. And, yes, ma'am.
I would request, Joe, maybe you can revisit it with the select board and ask them just to put in an operating budget. Why waste our time here if we're gonna just repeatedly replace them, which we all agree we should, it's just. let's
Oh, they're
put it in
replaced
now.
every year.
No, I'm not saying that, I'm
But,
saying to the
yes.
process.
Yes.
Let's-
That note is already in place.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay.
But let's just make sure that it doesn't get lost in the
Oh, it won't.
kerfuffle, that at least if it needs to be in here, it's in here, and then it
If they
gets
need it,
taken out.
it's got to be reflected,
right.
so that's the bottom line. Mark?
Talk about it.
Joe, anything on the state contract yet for electric vehicles, only because they're a lot less maintenance and may last longer?
We've gone through that.
Well, I don't know,
No,
I'm sorry.
Other than with regard to public safety, the board considers that to be a policy matter between public safety and the board. I've mentioned it in passing, when I talk about procurement. I don't believe that that's something that's actively being discussed, but if we want to discuss it, we'll add it to the conversation.
We've had electric vehicles
I don't know.
in the town, yes,
Okay.
and before you.
Correct.
Yeah.
Some would argue it's what brought me into town.
It could be. It was
On one?
it was
It was the
arranged,
It
downfall.
was an opening.
it was arranged by a study, and the use by it was by a former assistant town administrator.
Following direction.
Exactly. And it was tested and so forth. And I especially think fire and police would not want to depend on something like that today. Okay? So we'll close it at that. Anything else, gentlemen?
That's it for our requests.
Thank you. Any questions? We're good? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your time.
Thank you.
And we're open if you have any questions, and I hope we can,
Oh,
yeah. I know I have an open line with Kevin, and
yeah, I'll get one. So
we share neighbors. and-
we're gonna
Yeah.
swing it.
Thank you again.
I like your patches.
I know, I
Month
noticed
of
those
October.
too.
Very nice.
Yep.
Whoa. You bringing all the commissioners in, or what?
It's a joint special meeting.
Wow. What do I hear? Rates are gonna go down? Is that what I heard?
Just like your electric bill.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
And, Mr. Chairman, they'll be calling themselves into order.
Okay, so to make life easy, we're gonna be doing the water department first. And you gentlemen have
And
basically
ladies and ladies.
45 minutes And why don't we start by you introducing yourselves, and we can begin.
Gary Carrero. Dan Pelletier, Water Wastewater Superintendent.
Howard Thompson.
Noreen Donahue.
And other than Mr. Pelletier, your commissioners,
Water Wastewater Commissioners.
wastewater commissioners.
Yes.
Noreen?
Water,
all-
wastewater.
Water, wastewater. Okay, so you have input to both. The water department, we have two presentations here, water and wastewater. We're doing, go ahead.
These particular projects for this year, wastewater is covered by two different boards. These particular ones are really the oversight is by the Board of Selectmen.
You know, before we go, can I open our meeting so we can just have?
I'll go right ahead.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Gary Carrell, Harwich Water Wastewater Commissioner. I'm the chair of the board. I'd like to call our meeting to order for Friday, October 21st, 2022, at 10:44 at the Griffin Room, just so we're on the record. Thank you. To touch on what Noreen's saying, we're here, obviously, for the water, wastewater part of the presentation. We can answer lots of questions for the water department aspect of it, but as far as the wastewater, like Noreen was saying, the Board of Selectmen are in charge of the construction of the wastewater part of it. Until the flow is up and running for 90 days, then it gets turned over to us. So we will try to answer whatever we can for wastewater. And
Okay, but from a financial standpoint, what I want to cover is the water department's requests
perfect,
for the 5-year plan.
perfect.
So we're good, and Alan's gone through this a dozen times, Noreen,
On
1,000
this
times.
side.
It's up to you, sir.
All right, just so I'm in line with what you have in your plan, for fiscal year '24, I'd like to start with the pavement management plan. Is that fair? First top on
You
your
can
list?
start whatever you want.
To try to keep people from jumping around. So,
Here we have.
for the fiscal year '24 pavement management plan, this is the second of our, and really final of our pavement management plan. We're looking to repave the access roads to the well field off of Depot Road. A portion of that was paved when they built the treatment plant about 10 years ago. They didn't do the whole well field, so we're looking to close that out.
Give me a dollar amount.
For $175,000.
Okay.
We did meet with the county paving contractor recently and confirmed that number is still good presently, barring any.
Who'll be doing the paving?
It would be next July, so it would be contingent upon who wins the county bid for pavement, but we coordinate with DPW on that.
Okay, so DPW is involved.
Yeah.
Okay.
Quick question.
Sure.
Do you use those roads often,
Every day.
every day?
Yeah. So we, mandatory inspections of the wells and treatment plants every day, 365. So yeah.
Just a question. The crushed pavement stone, compressed, would that work? Do you need it paved for plowing? Is that what it is? So you have a solid surface to go to?
It
or-
certainly helps. We do have to pave, we are, like I said, required to go out 365 days a year, so we do operate plows. It's certainly much easier to plow pavement
Yeah.
than stone. And there's pavement right there, so we would just be doing an overlay as opposed to, milling or anything of that nature.
Okay.
All right. Next, for FY '24, let's do the new source, or new well construction was what it was previously titled as. We're not ready to go for construction yet, so I did bracket that. So we already completed the first phase of our investigatory work out in North Harwich. We did a number of test wells, and I have a stack of paper for our request for site exam, which is an official request to DEP, which is the next step before we get into the work that's outlined here. What we'll be looking to do under this scope is install an 8-inch diameter, large diameter test well, do a 5-day prolonged pump test, a source water assessment report, and ultimately determine what the final yield and capacity of that new drinking water well would be. I did, with the, there was an ARPA grant available that submissions were due September 30th. I did request funding for a portion of this project. That grant application were for projects up to $500,000. So I took the total cost of Phase 1 engineering, this Phase 2 engineering, and requested $425,000 from the county. I don't know if that's been awarded or will be awarded, but this could be potentially reduced in that amount, should we be fortunate to get the grant.
So can I ask a question about these grants and sort of monies you may get from outside sources? If your project is delayed or, you know, I know engineering doesn't have a supply chain issue, but, you know, if there were a supply chain issue in, you know, physical assets, does that affect the grant? Like, is the grant have a sort of drop dead date that,
Yeah, some of them, and it's, like, work either needs to start on or before a certain date. I believe for the ARPA stuff, it's 2026, calendar year, not fiscal year, so there is certainly time, you know, between today and that to get this done. But
Is this, you said this is Phase 2, Dan? Is there, how many phases are we talking about?
So this is the last stage before we get into design and construction of the actual well building and any treatment that will be required. So we did Phase 1 preliminary investigation. Phase 2 is putting a bigger well in where we are looking to, you know, finalize our placement.
Yeah.
And then next would be design and construction.
Is that reflected in here on this capital plan?
Not at this point. Only because we don't know yet, one, where exactly the well, you know, we're siting the well, and now we have to get between water quality analysis for if there's any increase or treatment that we'll need to do. So this is in North Harwich next to our green sand plant. It's where we're putting holes in the ground. We're probably several hundred to 1,000 feet away from the treatment plant now. Whether that needs to go through the plant or it can just get chemical injection into the system is all still an unknown. So until we get more information, I won't have an accurate cost as to kind of what.
Yeah, no, I
Next
get
phase,
that
yeah.
you can't have an accurate cost yet, Joe. This is a procedural thing. Like, for me, it's important to understand sort of the full, even if it's scope, if you will, even if you don't have the estimates for, if it's 5 phases, whatever it is. Like, to know that this goes on for, you know, whatever first phase was, that plus this one, plus, even if it's like a TBD in future years or
Mhm.
something. And I don't know from this person, I don't know, this is my first year doing it,
Sure.
but, so somehow, to me, it would be helpful to know that more's coming without having to remember everything for every person we've talked to.
So I think it's a very relevant question. I would also turn to your chair and ask about past practice or preference, meaning I'm sure the superintendent could whip up, so to speak, any number of applications for placeholders. I don't know how town meeting would react to TBD.
I know.
I don't know how town meeting would react to dollars are coming or even pie in the sky dollar amount. I do, however, expect that this would be one of the items that would require the 2/3 vote that's presently in the charter. So because we're talking about the $600,000 for the project now, because the narrative here at the joint meeting in December and at town meeting will make reference to future projects, I would love to argue that we put, you know, notice out there. But I think it first starts as a procedural question amongst the 5 of you. How do you want to capture that on this plan? You know, do you want to have it to be a TBD? Do you want to have it be narrative or anything else?
Excuse me.
Noreen has a
Good.
If I could make one clarification, which Dan will correct me if I'm wrong. I believe the intention was that the 600,000 would originally was estimated to be the total, and that actually would have covered the well construction, so that it's not intended to be another large number after FY '24. In other words, with the ARPA grant information aside, the 600,000 is the total. It just may fall over 2 years. It originally was planned to happen in 1 year.
I would just,
So,
Yeah, I'm looking at Dan,
Yeah.
because I'm reacting to that, but I think you probably should be.
yeah, so there's well exploration, which is what we're wrapping up now. There's well development, which is what we're looking to do, which is install this 8-inch well casing, do a test pump. Now that well is just a pipe in the ground. There's no pump or motor at the bottom of it. The next step, which would be TBD in the future, would be installing the pump, installing the motor, connecting that well to the existing water infrastructure by way of treatment plant or directly into the distribution system, depending on water quality. So there will be a subsequent ask, and that's gonna be for design and construction of tying this production well into the water system.
What's the worst case for design and construction?
It's a loaded question.
Yeah, I know.
No, it's not, it's loaded because from past discussions and changes in the future, it's going to be more difficult to go up than it is to go down. And my point is, if we're going to put 800,000 in, and we may be a bit high, I would rather, we can't put TBD because we've been, okay, there's no placement holders, those days are over. The question is there a number at the maximum that we could put in that, in fact, if it happens that we want to do something, it's easier to go down than it is to go up. And these are planning numbers, and they're not going to be voted on in terms of articles in '24. They're out years.
Right,
So we're really looking at, can you present a number, go back and think,
yes.
and give us a number, and then we can put it in an out year with the ability to change it going down instead of going up.
Yes, and so I have an order of magnitude number that I've worked with the engineer. One thing I would just caution is where we put it, because the permitting process for this is very much unknown. We submit things to DEP, and they get it back to us
Hey,
when
we're
they
the
get it back
government.
to us.
It takes
Right.
years. It takes years to put a well in.
Okay, so why don't we work on that? And Joe, you good with that?
Sure. I still go back to, it's a great question, it's a procedural question, and how do we all want to be on board with it? You know, one of the thoughts I had is, I've been talking about the writer and the editor of this document, and I really need to have a conversation with him, but he is me. You know, the title of new well construction, maybe for the 600,000, we call it new well analysis and development.
Right,
There's a new well construction that comes later on, and I would defer to the folks here, but if that's 5 years down the road, that would be fiscal year '29. So we wouldn't even see an impact upon this cycle of planning. So I will characterize this as I often do, words matter, and I could do a better job working with Dan on how we categorize it on this. Because you know, when reading Dan's materials and working with Dan as often as I do, and knowing all the projects we have, and I'm also gonna rely upon Dan to help me out, but generally speaking, you know, there is, and when I say this, don't think of it in the traditional land use, but survey and analysis. You know, surveying the concept of the project. So that's the first step of survey and analysis. Then the next step might be design development or design implementation or design and construction anticipation. Then it's permitting, then it's construction, then it's post-analysis. So, you know, if we sort of use it in those terms, this is the opening step, if I'm getting this right, for this particular well, and we are years away from those other steps.
Likely.
Correct, or unbury me, please?
Yeah, and that,
No. Go ahead.
yes,
Thank you.
okay, so what, it's to be worked on. and
Yeah.
It's complex, it can't be done in one little cell with a number, and we need it more direction.
And if I may, with these two groups assembled, I have my pen ready if anybody wants to edit the words that I have, if it would be a better phraseology under the title of that. So presently, we show new well construction.
Didn't you call it a pilot well?
I had in brackets, phase 2 engineering, or we could do new source engineering, phase 2. New source exploration, phase 2,
Analysis?
analysis.
I didn't hear new well.
Yeah, what's the?
New well,
Well.
yeah, new well source exploration.
I think you need to have something that
Yeah.
sort of questions the fact, do you go
New well
forward? or-
Right.
New well analysis?
Is there ever an issue that you don't go forward? Could there be numbers or whatever you're measuring, once you get the quantity or a number that doesn't make the cut, and you stop what you're doing?
In that location?
I would say at this point, very unlikely, unless there was some contamination that, you know, we've already done preliminary analysis. If further says, hey, there's XYZ compound in there, you know, that could derail it, of course, but
Okay, all I'm saying is you gotta, what I'd like to do is leave the result open. And I think you leave it open by just saying there are next steps to follow or whatever, should you get positive results.
So what it's worth, I have written new well source exploration.
Exploration is the ticket.
Everybody good with that?
yeah.
Okay,
I would have also gone with analysis.
I like analysis, nobody else seemed to like
It's
that.
all
word, so-
based on water
That's fine.
quality.
okay,
And Dan, I would just say if you think that the well could be installed before 2028, then you would put some number in the
Yeah.
plan, right? If not, then next year you have to remember to
Yeah.
plan for us.
I'll circle back with the engineering firm we're working with on that and just try to see if I
okay.
can project.
So we still have plenty of time
Oh, yeah.
It's
to
definitely a work in
redo and,
progress,
and
definitely a
and
work in
re,
progress.
refocus and,
And much like I'll be working with the deputy police chief, I will be working with the water superintendent, and we'll make sure that these
these are,
reflected in the plan.
I know
also
they're-
just want to jump out there very quickly, Mr. Chairman. I will put for the record, I don't know what happened to my document, knowing that I'm the only one that handles it. There must have been some keystrokes because, not to get into it right now, but I can assure you that I never had the number of $7 million under the wastewater Route 28 program. I believe that's the one that we had targeted at $48 million.
Other side. Yeah, you're good.
It's not 7, it's,
The 28,
328.
yeah, the, is what I had.
Hey, let's
The
not,
Route
let's
28.
not jump
Jump
around.
away.
sorry about that. never
Okay,
mind.
time. Let's not jump around
I've
from,
been rattled, I apologize.
okay. We're still on water department.
Yes.
So let's clear up what we got. So we've done 2 out of the 10, so continue.
To the big one, FY '24 Route 28 water main replacement. So this is proposing to replace approximately 2.2 miles of water main on Route 28 from Division Street to where Lower County Road intersects 28. The price that is on the form and was submitted was based upon the August cost estimate, rather, that was submitted on the project evaluation form for the state revolving loan fund request. Sorry, it's a mouthful. Since that time, we've had a couple meetings with DOT, and we are going to be segmenting off from Herring River to Division Street and be doing that as a non-participatory project. So our costs are gonna decrease dramatically for that half of the project. Just as far as timing, I had a meeting with them as recent as yesterday to really kick off our second discussion about including our projects as part of DOT's scope. So just when we look at numbers, just know that the conversations are taking place now with DOT so that as far as we're gonna have to come back with updated prices once we get through those discussions and understand what that relationship's gonna be.
So you're saying it'll go down, Dan, from
I-
the 14.7
yes.
million?
Yeah, I'm expecting, so if I can break that number down a little bit further. So when we do road work in Route 28, state road layouts, they typically have you use flowable fill or compactable density fill. It's basically like an excavatable concrete that they pour around the pipe as opposed to backfilling with sand, and that's to prevent settlement and things like that. In this $14 million number was over $2 million of controlled density fill, which by partnering at least from Division Street to Herring River, Mass DOT won't make us install that because their inspector is going to be there on site. It's going to be their contractor. They're not going to be able to. We're not going to have to do that fill. So right off the top, we're going to have potentially millions in savings there. In addition, there's a number of other savings that comes by partnering with Mass DOT from trench paving all the way through construction administration that we're gonna save on. So the number that was submitted was based on the original cost estimate that we submitted to the state for funding approval, and since that time, we've been working to try and get that down.
When do you think you'll have a more realistic number?
So by partnering with DOT, we're kind of tethered to their schedule. They are only at 25% design. We're probably at 50 with our project. They're looking to bid the paving job February of 2024. So we're still quite a ways out from when they're planning to put it out to bid. I did ask them the question yesterday, where you're looking to go out in February 24, and they said it may slip some. Do we need to request the money this year or next year? They said, no, definitely do it this year because February 24 is in that fiscal year, so.
Would you do me a favor?
24.
We have a joint presentation with the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom in December 5th?
December 5th.
Each one of your requests seems to have a caveat to it or a qualifier to it. I know it's going to take maybe an hour of your time, and I appreciate that, but, or as the board. Can you give me the caveats and the qualifiers by like the end of November? Basically, it's up to date on all the requests that you have, because I don't want to bring you back and go verbally.
Mhm.
I think it's much easier that you do, like new well construction. Well, the new title is this, and it actually means we're currently here, we're gonna go somewhere here, and we're estimating this. Just brief bullet points on each one. It'll save you 2 hours of coming in and going over everything. This way, when we're at the meeting, we can say, yeah, you're looking at 12 requests, but let me give you an update on the requests. Because yours it's fluid.
Yeah.
It's fluid. And,
Appropriate, guys.
yeah, I think that'll help us a lot.
Yeah.
And take you off the hook by them saying, well, we understand it to be this. And we can just come back and say, well, this is the most up-to-date information that we have. And it's still subject to change till town meeting, the night of town meeting. So they can live with that, but we'll have the opportunity, since everything is depending on this, depending on that. If you can give us that would help us move this thing forward.
Absolutely.
Fair enough?
And one thing too, I just want to kind of put out there for discussion's sake. With respect to project cost, there's going to be discussions and people are going to ask, what's this mean for the tax rate? So as far as the funding and project costs, just as far as timeline, we submitted our initial applications back in August to the state for funding for the Route 28 water, sewer, and Phase 3 sewer projects. They release a list called the Intended Use Plan this winter, February, March. It is at that time that we're also, as I was told, we'll understand what we're gonna get for principal forgiveness on those loan amounts. So until we get the intended use plan and those forgiveness commitments, we really won't be able to have a complete discussion about potential tax impacts until we get all that information.
that's fair.
So, just so that people know that's out there.
Okay, so now we'll move from the 14. We've hit the ones for 24. You want to continue quick?
Can I just make one comment to Joe? The number on the summary sheet is 14 million, it should be 14.7, okay.
Moving forward, try to be a little quicker.
Yeah.
For 25, we are looking to replace our 1998 backhoe. The crew has requested to replace that instead with a compact loader instead of a backhoe, because we rarely use the backhoe arm portion of it. It's a yard machine. So that's
Okay.
with that.
Wait,
175.
It's 125, I
this
think.
says 125
Yeah,
and
Dan, you did the backhoe, but before that on their list is the
here.
Oh.
vehicle replacements.
Apologies.
175.
It's vehicle and equipment.
We have
Vehicles, 175.
vehicles for
Two
175.
Ford pickups, Dan.
Yeah, for fiscal year 25, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so I do have a request for 175 for fiscal year 25 to replace a 2011 250 and a 2010 150.
And we're looking at the funding would be,
For retained earnings for
Okay.
these.
okay.
And then the equipment would be
The equipment was the backhoe,
All right.
and that was on there for 125, I believe.
Okay.
But the two trucks, does that go in the same, do those get replaced regularly, or like the police, or is that just something that should,
Much more infrequently,
so that should?
miles,
continue?
hours, yeah.
So that should stay?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we're talking about painting a water tank again and finding somebody to do it.
Yes, so we have some, another caveat. Our tank inspections this year, we're doing an engineered coating analysis to really spec what painting restoration we're gonna need to do. This is for the Pleasant Lake tank. We just recently did upgrades there, so this is really the final step in that process.
2 million?
For the elevated tank, hopefully it comes in less. The last time we bid for the Lothrop tank, I think the bids at the time were 2 million. Granted, this is a much simpler tank to paint, and if we are able to do it with an overcoat versus a full
Sandblasting.
sandblast, that's our hope.
Okay, so it's 25.
Yeah.
Okay, next.
Moving on.
10 million.
So the distribution systems upgrade for 10 million, that was a placeholder that we put in last year in response to the ARPA, or the infrastructure bill money that came out. We have not yet acted on the design funds. I don't really have much more bandwidth at the moment, and we're still waiting for a lot of information from the federal government that hasn't come through as to the allocation of the infrastructure bill yet. So I would say at this point, this was on here as a placeholder, but absent movement at this point, I don't know that we're gonna be able to act on
Okay,
it.
if we can delete placeholder and estimate is the number, you know.
What's,
Do what?
What did you ask, sorry?
I'm saying delete the word placeholder, and these numbers are estimates of your analysis. Correct?
yes,
That's what I saw.
all right.
And it's fine, putting the estimate in. And this way, you've already done it, and this is just a reflection of last year's.
Right.
Okay? And,
26.
Pipe discontinuity upgrades for fiscal year '26. This is a project that's been longstanding on our capital plan, comes from our 30-year master plan. We have a number of areas with pipe discontinuity, which essentially is where, right outside Town Hall, we go from a 12-inch to a 10-inch to an 8-inch, back up to a 10-inch to an 8-inch, and I think back to 12 by the time we get beyond the stop sign on the other side of this little stretch here. So that can inhibit flow when
That was before us.
I was gonna say, that
Yeah.
doesn't make any
That was
sense.
How
before
does
us.
that happen?
patchwork, really, from, when they started putting mains in, this street was an 8, and
It's okay.
So do
Thank
you
you.
replace them with all one continuous
yeah, we would
diameter?
do, in this instance, would probably run a 12 or a 16-inch all the way through Harwich Center here.
stupid question, but what's the difference between a distribution system upgrade and a pipe discontinued, whatever that word, discontinuity?
So a
Right.
distribution system upgrade is more general of a category. It could be a municipal interconnection between water systems in a different town where pipe discontinuity is addressing the changing of pipe size in a specific area.
Could that effort, the second one, be part of the distribution system upgrade?
Sure.
So my question is, are we double counting? Could that pipe, getting rid of, discontinuing that pipe, I can't say that word.
So, you have to take into facts of the age of those pipes in Main Street. We're talking 1936.
Yeah, but if I'm upgrading a system, is that,
Well, yeah,
are those
but you-
pipes part of the system?
So the 10 million in the last article that I think you were referring to was a placeholder figure for 3 potential projects that I'd identified for use with the infrastructure bill money. West Harwich resiliency, directional
Okay, so
drilling,
there-
other stuff. So there were
Those
earmarked
three are not
projects.
included, that one is not
Within-
included
Right.
with the three.
Right.
But could the three be four?
Sure.
Could the discontinuance of the pipe upgrade be part, that 1.5 be added to the 10, and now it becomes 11.5? Not that it makes a difference, but is that considered one of the, could that be a project added to the other three?
Yes.
Okay.
So what you're saying, combine the article, or the
Yeah, I'm
proposal.
combining the request, in
It
other
just-
words.
Well, only if it makes sense, right? Because I like the fact that it's broken down, because you might do one, not the other. Like, we might have an opportunity to do the smaller one.
Hmm.
Like, if you wait, you might not be able to get 11.5 million, but you
Right.
might be able to get the smaller one and fix something.
And just,
If it makes sense, you should combine them, but
And how many projects do we want going on at one point, too? I mean, we don't want to spread ourselves too thin.
well, so just for a little clarification, the 1.5 million discontinuity project predates the 10 million. The 10 million was added last year along with the 300,000 design money that we put on special town meeting. So this was in an effort to not change our entire plan in the 11th hour last year. If you remember, I had to come in before as the special meetings. We had just added the $10 million and the design money that would fund that project. I am happy to consolidate or not.
Okay, keep it, but my question was, or is, I don't really care how we classify it, could the 1.5 be added to the 10? And the answer is yes. The question of, should it be,
yeah, that's a whole, I think you guys were now, you want us to add it. I'm like, no, like, only if it makes sense.
well, if you're gonna get some state funding and stuff.
Well, we have to apply for the funding as individual projects anyway.
Yeah, so,
So, again, if it makes sense.
Go ahead,
do
Noreen.
what
Yeah,
you-
no,
I don't-
can I just say that of the 10 million, those projects haven't been, specified yet, whereas the discontinuity one is very clear, concrete, set. I would much prefer them
how long has
separate.
that existed as a request or a,
Discontinuity?
yes?
Well, it goes on for 100 years, as Alan just stated.
Oh,
That project,
long-
the
that-
1.5,
It's been on the capital.
Yeah.
how long has it been as a request?
It's
That's
been
what-
on the.
5,
it's been on
6,
our
7
capital.
years,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
You know,
The out
so
years.
my point is, yeah, it's existed, it's gonna keep on existing. It doesn't have an end.
Yeah, as long as it
Right.
works.
As long as you know that what you wanna do, the question is, who wants to fund it?
Whereas those other 3 projects, we don't have that information that it's gonna go on forever.
Well, hopefully it doesn't go as long as the
Well,
1.5.
we don't even know what they are, really,
Okay.
so.
So now I'm totally confused, but so can I ask a question? The 1.5 is specifically to
Change the
discontinue, I can't even say it, the pipes within Harwich Center, is that
So,
where
yeah,
we
this,
would do that?
yeah, so there's in our 30-year master plan, there's multiple discontinuity projects identified. Harwich Center is one example, at the end of Chatham Road at 28 is another. So we have them throughout. I'd have to go back and see which group of discontinuity that this specifically was identifying.
So my point is, just having gone through the
Yeah.
whole sewer project over in East Harwich, is $1.5 million enough to like dig up the street and replace the pipes?
For example, at the end of, right at 28 by Saquatucket Harbor, there's a discontinuity there that's probably only 100 or so feet long. It just bottlenecks down, there's a T, bottlenecks back up. That,
So you'll pick a
Certainly.
project to do this on that would fit into the 1.5 million? It doesn't necessarily, you're not saying it's this project or that project?
right, at this point,
Got it, okay.
no. I'm
Okay.
identifying, based on our capital plan, our master plan for the department, we had targeted, infrastructure upgrades that we were supposed to be making on recurring timelines, this
Okay.
being one of them.
Okay, yeah,
I think the 10 million is kind of throwing people because we did add that kind of last minute
yeah.
because of the federal money that is being offered.
And I don't have a problem
Yeah,
with that,
but I'm
it's
just
just
saying
that
that's-
1.5, like, I'm trying to figure out what the scope of it is that enough money to do, when you were talking about Harwich
Yeah.
Center, I was like, that seems like a much bigger project financially.
But it seems like maintenance rather than anything else. you know?
Well,
Keep the water going.
Right, yeah.
It's a
Okay,
lot of
All right.
maintenance.
Okay, I'm good.
okay, let's get down to the last three.
you have to remember, we're running an antique shop.
Right.
All right.
Okay, well, we're looking at wastewater.
Last three being wastewater, so, similar caveats apply to, is that what I was referring to on
And let me put a
28?
caveat on this. The town administrator and I had a meeting prior to this, just a discussion on where does wastewater really belong? Is it a capital outlay? It's certainly an expense to the town. It's going to be an expense to the town. It's got its own financial impacts. It has its own financial sources and so forth, and terms, limits, everything, which is totally different than the 90% of numbers you see above. So I think this is sort of a fuzzy-wuzzy kind of look at what has to be done by the town. Joe, am I sort of?
You're definitely on the right track, and first of all, now that I have the proper form in front of me, I thought I had 2 copies of the same document. I had an earlier version, so now that Gary was good enough to surrender the real one, you folks should have in front of you the plan that talks about the capital plan right now for fiscal year 2024 of just under $74 million, which is an eye-popping number. It is enough to anyone, knock the breath out of anybody. But as I've indicated at the bottom of the sheet, 93% of that, 68.7 million or so, is related to what I've referred to the board, the selectmen, as generational major wastewater and water infrastructure issues. These are generational because of, and I love the reference to the antique shop, what's been said about the water distribution and those projects. And for phase 3, it is generational because we were looking at it in a 40-year comprehensive plan, and we now know that 40 years is getting whacked down to 20 years. And so the Board of Selectmen are gonna continue their discussion at their meeting on Monday, the 24th, about budget message. And we've been talking about, okay, for the capital plan, how do we fund it? Well, the question is, how do we fund 3 different elements of it? The 68 point something that is water and wastewater infrastructure related, as well as those that are related to buildings, and then those that are everything else. And so what I think these folks can help you with today is understand how the phase 3 East Harwich collection system, the $47 million gorilla in the room, relates to the overall operation of the town, as well as giving you a quick overview, I would think, because the sewer main installation is the partner of the water main replacement in the same area. So 14.7 million or so water main replacement, and also while we're there, throw in the sewer line that was never there before. So for me, when I'm looking at this plan and I have to come back to everybody and say, how am I gonna pay for it? 68.7 million of fiscal year 24 is something completely different. The board may continue to give me instruction that says do not do overrides, but that doesn't apply necessarily in this case. It's for everything else that's regular.
Okay, so you're looking at 47 million in '24.
Yes.
How are you gonna do it?
So, we're gonna get 25% principal forgiveness from the Cape and Islands Protection Fund. Ideally, we're gonna get another 6.6% principal interest, or 3.3, from the Disadvantaged Communities Program, and I've heard they're offering another 7.5% to the Disadvantaged Communities Program as well. So that would net us somewhere north of 35% principal forgiveness on that project. So we would look to fund that through the SRF loan over a 30-year borrowing, ideally at 0%, which is what we were able to get for phase 2.
Piece of cake.
So, in mathematical terms, what's the bottom line? What's the number that we're really looking at instead of 47 million?
Well,
All these forgivenesses.
I'm glad you
and
asked.
credits and all this
Well,
stuff.
740.
What's the bottom line
well-
off of 47?
I think this is something, I'm glad you asked that question because it's important for people to get this out in the airways as well. Although, after all of that forgiveness, the total note may be around 30 to 32 million,
Okay,
or less,
okay,
we still have to appropriate at town meeting the full 47.
okay, that's,
So
okay.
I just want that out there.
So basically, the manufactured retail price of this car is 47 million, but when you talk to the sales manager and he lets you
It's on
drive
sale.
it,
Yeah,
you're
it's on sale.
talking, you can take it away for 30,
Need somebody to
30,
negotiate my new car.
30 million cash.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I-
Yes, ma'am, you're gonna screw this up. Go ahead. Go ahead, Noreen, you're the best.
Dan will fix me if I go off balance again. At any rate, what I want to say is that the, infrastructure money that we all hear about and are looking for, I believe for these projects, they're going to flow through our state refunding normal system. So you're never going to hear, unfortunately, that, wow, the town got 25 million in infrastructure. But in fact, we will be getting infrastructure funds through the things that Dan just mentioned. So this is the infrastructure money from the infrastructure bill that we'll be getting. The SRF funding process normally has discounts built into it, like a few % of principal forgiveness, a smaller amount for disadvantaged communities, which we fall under that. But these higher amounts you're hearing from principal forgiveness and other things, for instance, the 25%, that actually is the federal infrastructure money, which for these types of projects flows through the state.
Thank you.
I think-
Question?
Go ahead.
Okay. 2 questions.
Dan didn't have to correct me, on that one, so that's good.
Will the 47 million or 30 to 32 million be spent in actual fiscal year '24? Second question, is there an owner's project manager for this construction work?
Yeah, so, question 1, it will not all take place in '24. It's expected to be, what I'm saying now, 24 to 36 months construction, between supply chain and all that sort of stuff. With respect to the OPM, there is on-site resident engineering inspection as part of this. So OPM, like we just went with Brooks Park or Brooks Academy, is a requirement of vertical construction, Chapter 149. This is Chapter 3039M, which is horizontal construction, so you don't have that OPM requirement, but there is on-site resident engineer to oversee construction and whatnot.
If I could add to that very quickly, because as we're using the OPM for the Brooks Academy for the benefit of the town, to have that expert to rely upon and to seek damages if necessary, it's been our standard operating practice on certainly phase 2 and 2A, as I understood it. Phase 1 was before my time, but I'm sure the same thing. So it may not be called the same thing, but it's the same effect. The town will be able to rely upon outside experts to protect the town's interests, and if those aren't met, the town could take action against that individual process. Not individual person, but individual process.
I've got 3 minutes and I gotta go. I just want to add something. When you look at this, what I've asked you to do, bullet points for the top, down the bottom, if we tell people, we keep on seeing a number 47 million, and we use your engineering about credits and feedback and rollback and, how do I sell the car? And you're gonna get a rollback and a feedback and all that. If you could give me the formula or start it with 47 minus 20 for this, and then you get 27, and 7 million off because of this. If I could have that, I think that's, we speak, historically, this committee and the finance committee speak in terms that they understand. The audience that we speak to, as I've said many times, are not MBAs, okay? Nor should they be. Nor are they engineers like our librarian, who did a fine job in her efforts a couple of years ago. What I need is something very easy to understand, like you just explained. Really, I went from 47 million to 30 to 32. You did it in 2 seconds. And I think we need a piece of paper, real quick, put as a talking point, so on December the 5th, we say, as the audience is in the room and watching us on TV, we say to them, wait, you're looking at 47 million, but by the time, you get to here, much like the high school. We built the high school for X amount, but if we did it in time, 50% of it or 45% of it was knocked off because of state participation, so forth. I need that. It's an easier sell when you tell somebody, okay?
Definitely, yeah.
So I gotta run.
The only other
Okay,
thing
with-
I would ask Dan is, again, this says phase 3. It begs the question, after the 47 mil, where are we going with this? And so it's the same thing we talked about before, is to understand if there's nothing reflective here, but that's probably because it's gonna take a few years.
Acting
So-
clerk. Excuse me, the acting clerk, will you close the meeting when you're ready?
I will.
I have to take off.
Okay, thank you, Rich.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Can I answer that one?
To follow up on that point, just from a communication standpoint, what percentage of sewering the town will be done by that 47 million?
As much as you think.
True, but you gotta, in terms of communicating where it goes, why we're spending it, how we
Yeah,
get money
okay.
back.
Can I-
And what's next? It just
Yeah.
begs
It's the what
that
next,
question.
but what percentage?
I think the
Can I-
whole thing around this at the town meeting is gonna be communication and clarity,
Exactly.
and it's gonna be hard.
Yeah, okay.
But we can
Go ahead, Mary.
manage that, and you can do it better. So what percentage maybe would be one? If that doesn't look so good, we can explain it in a different way. But that would be my first request.
Okay, so just in general,
Yes.
the town has an 8-phase comprehensive wastewater plan.
Right.
So this phase 3 is one and one only phase, it is phase 3. By the completion of the 8 phases, we have, depending on what changes with nitrogen levels, the state regulations and all the other things, by the end of that, we will have sewered or accounted for the nitrogen in 50% of our town. We have decided to only do 50% as opposed to, we being the town, only do 50% as opposed to 100% like Chatham. Because 50% is what will currently satisfy the state's requirements. If we wanted to do 100% and spend $500 million, we could certainly do that. But our first goal was to satisfy.
So phase 3 gets us through 50%?
No.
No.
The
Eight
eight
phases gets us through
Gets us through
50%.
50%,
So 8 phases is 50%.
right. So we
And
never
then-
looked at it as a portion of what percentage of 50% each phase is. We certainly could do that. It's just we've been talking about these 8 phases for 15 years.
But you've also changed the time frame. We've gone from 40 to 20.
Well, we haven't yet. The DEP is postulating that possibility. And we're also in the middle of revising our CWMP anyway, so that will come out with a new study.
So, everything is subject to change.
True,
DEP is changing things as we talk.
true.
So, that whole thing could go out the window.
And I was gonna make one more point on that subject to change. On this particular job at 47 million,
Yeah.
to put it in proper perspective, sadly, when this was looked at in the past and costed, it was costed at 30 million. And then we thought we would get our infrastructure money off of the 30 million.
Yeah.
And possibly be down to 20 million or slightly less. The difference between the 30 and the 47 is nothing more than pandemic, supply chain, and everything else, so it's a shame. Dan?
To further that discussion, and perhaps for the benefit of the folks in front of you, the next steps, the CWMP revision, dealing with the DEP regulations, that is a process that is part and parcel of what the Board of Selectmen have to do to push forward the CWMP. When we make the decisions and we get the flow going, as they've said at the outset of this meeting, then these folks come into play. So, as well as they speak and understand, we all must remember that, as they said, everything's subject to change, and there are also ongoing discussions that Dan and I are having with the board, with our engineering firms, to talk about CWMP before it goes to the water, wastewater commissioners.
So are we gonna go through the other two while
Yeah.
we have everybody here? We
If I
have
can
time to
just-
do that?
Building on,
I would highly recommend it.
Oh, I would like to, yeah.
so, to Joe's point, things are still changing, right? So we had a meeting with the Board of Selectmen on October 3rd, which resulted in a big change for the Route 28 dry sewer pipe project. So as we got into design of that, it was apparent that groundwater is pretty consistently about 5 feet or just below there, below grade, below road level. So gravity system would have been pretty much entirely in groundwater. So the board gave us the directive to transition to a low-pressure sewer for that section of Route 28. The cost for low pressure, including grinder pumps, was about nearly half of a gravity collection system. So that $7 million figure should go down considerably just based on the switch to low pressure, but also go down even further based on DOT including it as part of their project. So there should be some decent reductions in that one as well, but we're still working on it.
How long can that pipe sit in the ground without being used?
So that, it's gonna be likely HDPE pipe, so I would say that material would outlive probably all of us. I mean,
That's not saying
it's,
much.
yeah,
That's not
100
saying
years,
much.
100 years, you know, it really, you know, it's that high-density polyethylene, it's get pretty.
Okay.
But that said, my recommendation to the board, town, selectmen, after completing phase 3, would be to move to that area of Route 28 and start utilizing that pipe so that we're not just burying infrastructure in the ground and getting to it when we can. I think it's important to prioritize that as the next place to go.
But that's a decision for the select board.
Right. And then lastly on here was a request for phase 4 design. We don't yet know where phase 4 is yet. I would make the recommendation West Harwich, but that decision has not been made. But I did just as a placeholder, to try to maintain some sort of timeline and consistency for progress, I did put a design
Started, yeah.
in there.
Any idea on the wastewater treatment plant, Dennis? Are we gonna have to build our own?
So we are talking with Dennis. I actually met with DEP to see if they can drum up some support at maybe the federal level, EPA, to try to help get some dollars and get these conversations really fueled up. But yes, I've been working with my counterpart over there, and Dennis. for a plan.
Would the total of these three, Dan, be part of the loan? Like, would these other two get added to that?
So,
Like, in terms of funding for these, whatever the 7 million becomes in the 2.5-ish?
design, as I understand, it's a non-eligible cost through SRF, so that would be a loan not subject to those principal forgivenesses, as I understand it. But the 7 million would be the construction for the dry sewer pipe.
Thank you.
Noreen. Go ahead, Noreen.
Okay, thank you. Dan, I was wondering if it would be helpful for this board, if you could clarify, for instance, the water, that it comes through our water retained earnings, not the tax rate, and that wastewater, in fact, goes on bills spread across the whole town that would be bonded for, I forget what it is, 20 years. So it
30,
has
yeah,
very
20, 30.
different impacts, but the
Yeah.
water retained, the water projects.
So for the water projects, meaning the debt, what you're saying?
Right.
So debt from the 14, really, any debt that we would take relative to water is gonna be paid through user fees or water enterprise fund. On the sewer side, those are under the Board of Selectmen's purview. Those have been, at least as part of phase 2, as a debt exclusion that was spread amongst the tax base for all residents.
So the water projects will not affect the tax rate while you're doing your calculating.
But when we go to town meeting, we'll be able to translate the impact to the actual residents? Is that true?
What, not for the water projects, the only impact you'll see is on your water bill.
Yeah.
Which is,
Well,
I
that's
mean, people will wanna know,
You're
like,
gonna pay.
what does that mean? Because
Right,
we're
right,
gonna,
right.
we're gonna spend 15 million on water.
Right,
in-
right, right.
Right.
In 20 FY '24. So I'm not saying exactly how that would translate, but everybody wants to know, how are my bills gonna change, whether it be your water bill or your tax bill?
We actually.
We'll have an open public meeting, hearing, before any water rates are changed. That's just legally, that's what we have to
Yeah.
do.
That's
So
your
that's-
intention.
Yeah.
Excuse me. We actually look at our capital projects and figure them in with our water rates 7 years in advance, so that we could, give out the information that way if it was requested. But it's already been looked at, I'm happy to say, so that we know that we can afford to pay for these things now.
So our recent rate increase that we just did, we did a base rate increase 2 years ago, and it was 5% on the tiers the last 2 years. That's supposed to get us, including all the items in our capital plan, out through FY '25, before we have to evaluate another rate increase. That said,
Yeah.
it's been considerable supply chain things, so we do need to go back and just double check, cost inflation, electric, all that stuff goes up, but.
All I'm getting to is, even good news is good to share with the maybe not so good news too, so.
So can I make an observation or a comment? In both of your plans, water, wastewater, there's really nothing in 2027 or 2028, and we know that's not realistic, right? That there are gonna be some things. And it may be a capacity issue, because you got a lot going on. But I think there's some messaging that we need to make to the taxpayers that,
That goes back to
You
the
know,
other
yeah, I
conversation
mean,
we
Karen's
had
been kind
earlier.
of talking about this, that you have projects. I get it's hard to figure out what's gonna be in those buckets, but to me, having 0 in there is just, it's not realistic, I don't think.
No, realistically, we have a 30-year plan. I mean, so yeah, we have things in there.
Well, it's
But
all in
that
what
we're
we can
not seeing them
afford. Yeah,
here.
they're- we didn't submit
Was it,
Yeah.
last
how
year.
far out were you requesting that?
28.
Okay.
Joe?
Go ahead,
Welcome to
Joe.
the chair, thank you. Because there's a lot that's been just said, and I want to make sure I get a lot on the record, because, again, when we're dealing with wastewater, it isn't just at this level, and it isn't just with these folks. And to the commentary, although well taken, I would say that it would be irresponsible of me and Dan to put numbers related to wastewater. I would rather deal with the 2/3 amendment, because one of the many things that I need to emphasize in the short time that we have left is the town administrator has not worked in the past with the water wastewater superintendent. Now, the first instance, town administrator was meant to talk about the role and not the person. Dan and I have been working since I became town administrator in this town, interim 2.5 years ago, to make sure that he is front and center. That's something that the town did not do prior. Dan was relied upon for sure, but he was kept in the shadows. Now, this isn't to shine a light on Dan and say, ha-ha, tag, you're it. But rather, it's to demonstrate that the comprehensive wastewater management plan for the entire town, for the remainder of the history of the town, ad infinitum, until God says otherwise, is the responsibility of everybody in the town, but certainly the board and the town administrator. And we must rely upon our subject matter expert. Because in years past, we put numbers on a capital plan and said, these numbers are great, and then we're gonna go out to bid, and I'd leave it to others to explain how that impacted the town. But as I made a reference earlier, I know what it did for me. It got me a job here in the town of Harwich, so we need to be very careful on the wastewater side for sure.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting we put numbers in, that wasn't the suggestion, but I just think, I
Well,
mean,
but if
it's
I
a
may
messaging thing.
If I may continue to that, though, because there's a lot more to get out. You heard reference to phase 4. You heard reference to the ongoing amending and revision of the comprehensive wastewater management plan. All of that's going on consistently and constantly, and as we get more information, we bring it back. The question about phase 4, Dan had a great statement a moment ago. He said he would love to have it be in West Harwich, but that's not his decision, and that is a discussion that has to first start at the board level. We've talked about funding sources. I also want to take this opportunity to remind everybody, because first of all, it was an excellent explanation, I think, as to how we handle water versus how we handle wastewater. But remember that a year ago, when we got a vote of town meeting to revise the comprehensive wastewater management plan, That was without any foreshadowing of what DEP is working on for their regs. That's just great work offered by our wastewater superintendent and so many other folks, including many folks in this room. So we got lucky with that one. But we also at that time established a special purpose stabilization fund.
Right.
And that's the first time I've been able to have it roll off the tongue and have it be right.
It's pretty good.
Thank you. I won't do it again, I'm sure. But what that means is, beginning January 1st of 2023, our short-term rental and hotel motel tax is going up from 4 to 6%. And town meeting, on the advice of the administrator, superintendent, and others, earmarked a quarter of that, 6%, to go straight to a fund for wastewater. The board is still having discussions. It's not timely yet to get into the in-depth nature of it, but we're getting closer on perhaps establishing, I'm gonna try it, Dan, but I'll look to you for an assist, a WIF, a water infrastructure investment fund, which despite the fact that it says water, can be established for wastewater. In fact, many of our neighboring towns have established a WIF. That's another thing that we're looking at the administrative and superintendency level, to impact upon the stabilization fund, so that we're not simply going to the property tax and to the taxpayers and all of that, that we're trying to set aside funds and find other funds. And then in addition to that, there has been minimal discussion that will ramp up, because if I remember correctly, the town has a land bank debt, which is, generally speaking, and I'll look in the direction of Ms. Donahue because I may not get it right, was the precursor to CPC. So other towns have paid down their land bank debt and have now said, now that that's gone, let's not miss that opportunity to say, we had this, let's go somewhere else. So we could impact upon the conclusion of the land bank debt service to contemplate a portion of CPC funds. Now, that's as far as I want to go, because that's a big statement. What I'm trying to emphasize is, to the plan, to the process, and to the funding, there's a lot of stuff that we're working on, and to all of your points, it benefits no one greater than me and Dan to make sure that we do a better job than in the past of communicating. And that's why we're having almost weekly meetings, or certainly twice monthly, of capital. That started in June. You know, we're doing it differently. So there's a lot to contemplate with all of this. But I wanted to get that out there because, again, these folks, they keep our water running, flowing, and digestible, and it's award-winning water. And as much as they can help us on wastewater, they will, but that first goes back to the board on those levels.
Yep.
And so others have tried. Dan and I are trying to do it differently, for the benefit of the town, but I would also share selfishly for the benefit of our careers, if I could.
One point, just thank you guys. And we are so lucky to have you guys dealing and focusing with this. This is huge.
Just to touch on what you're saying, we do as a board appreciate that, but the fact is, it's Dan and the employees of the water department who give us the water and the quality. I've never seen such dedicated people, and especially under Dan's leadership, looking for ways to save money. The amount of work that the employees have taken on themselves and are doing in-house have literally saved us hundreds of thousands of dollars. So as much as I appreciate that, it's really Dan and his staff, so
It's
we are
awesome.
very fortunate to have them here.
Thank you.
What I would just like to also throw out, and I think Joe touched on it, you know, we're trying to rebuild faith and confidence in what we're doing, right? And I totally hear we gotta do better at messaging, getting the information out there, right? And these unknowns, or the kind of uncertainty that we're talking about today, is kind of, I see it as part of that transparency. As part of phase 2, we put a number on a paper, we committed to it, never went back, and found ourselves burned pretty bad, you know? So I'm just trying to
With
acknowledge
severe
that,
repercussions.
you know, we're all adults in the room and can have a conversation that, you know, here's the best thing we got, or here, you know, we submitted these forms a couple months ago. It's a lot of things that have changed since then. So I'm just trying to be open to at least where we're at in the process, what things need to come in, what we're waiting on, and when I think numbers, you know, will solidify and become more refined.
Great
There's a
work.
lot in flux. But
Well, and communication can take you pretty far, because if people get to a point where they can understand, you drop this, I don't get it, piece. So I applaud you on the, you know, earning back faith and,
Trying.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
need trust, is what we need.
yeah, but,
And
yeah.
open and honest, transparent.
This
And
is
this
as
is one of the reasons
complicated
I-
as it gets, and
Right.
I'm trying to then squeeze it down into simple sound bites that people can go, oh, I understand, which goes to my question, how far are we along the way? You know, it's just give me little statements that can take this antique shop to the next century, right?
Yeah, there's nothing worse than you said.
I've had initial
True.
and early discussions with Channel 18 and Brooks Library to try to put together like a What's Up with Wastewater podcast. Just kind of
Absolutely.
how the funding for wastewater projects works, you know, where we're at in the timeline, what this whole nitrogen thing's about. Just trying
And
to
then it's on
find
record.
the time.
In your
Yeah.
spare time.
Yeah, just trying to find the time right now.
Yeah, but you can make it
To
conversational.
build off of that, you folks may have heard me say it at other venues, but I will be continuing the discussion on it. The town's I'm working, and staff members are working on a significant procurement of nominal cost, but immense value, and that's creating a community engagement portal related to our website. And that will allow us to put out any number of questions that can survey on affordable housing, wastewater, the two biggest things we work on, the two biggest things that have special purpose stabilization funds, there we go, two and two, and anything else. So as Dan talks about his efforts, we're also working behind the scenes to get more out there, and it's all about community engagement. And I just want to also add, you folks and these folks, so these folks know it because they more often than we would have something called the general public tying into their meetings. We don't really get the general public at our meetings, but we'll get it in December. But we all touch back on that community engagement. So I do want to put out there that we're always trying to do better.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I'm not a chair, I
You
can't
gotta
write.
be recognized.
Karen is.
Noreen,
It's
go ahead.
nice, Mark.
And I add for background, you know, we had a delay for a few years because of a bad bill followed by the pandemic and several other things. But the normal procedure, and I guess I'm speaking for the Board of Selectmen right now, which I really don't want to do. But, for instance, on the 47 million on Phase 3, what had been done for Phase 2 back years ago is there would be community meetings. I mean, those people are gonna want to know, as you would both know, exactly which streets, things like that, everything else. So all of those things would be happening next spring, next summer, everything else. I'm only mentioning them because they would not be coordinated by this board. It is the Board of Selectmen that coordinates the new projects and makes the decisions for the whole town.
Great.
We only make the decisions for the parts that are already operating and going on. So there would be, it's hard to get the people out, but there would be a tremendous amount of opportunities. We had, I cannot tell you how many meetings in the community center over the 2 years previous to Phase 2.
Well,
So
yeah.
you're seeing it because it's in a delay period. That used to be a regular ongoing process. Then everything stopped dead with the bad bid followed by the pandemic, so.
Well, democracy and wastewater is a participatory sport, right? Just as another way to look at this, I tell my kids, because Harwich is going through this, when they inherit my property, they're gonna have the most state-of-the-art water and sewer than any other place they've lived in. So it's like, this stuff is not going on in the rest of the country the way it is here. So I push them to the outcome. You're gonna be in great shape, kids, all right? That having lived in many other parts of the country, it's not happening.
Well, 50% of them, where do you live? Depends on where you live.
That's okay, we can work on that later. It doesn't have to be,
That's
you know,
okay.
just all about me. But that's the, you know, the bigger message is we're way ahead of most of the country.
But you have to remember, this is a very unique place.
Yes, of course.
If you don't do it, it shows up in your water glass.
Right. And in Mississippi, it shows up in your water glass and a few other places, but we're ahead of those
Yep.
efforts.
One last question, go ahead, Martha.
Yeah, I just want, for the next meeting, can we have an updated schedule? I've like marked this thing to shreds.
Yes, the only reason why you didn't get it for this meeting is I was anticipating 2 other adds to it.
Oh, okay.
And so I am waiting to hear back from the regional school,
Yep.
and like I said, the IT director and I are
Okay.
updating it as well.
Yeah, with all the,
Sorry, one last thing, I was gonna ask this earlier when Rich was here, but do we have, I know we have meetings on the calendar, but do we know who's coming to those meetings? Because I'm not gonna be here for one of them, and I wanna be here for certain
So,
departments.
we don't, other than we talked about a joint meeting with an elected board and a joint meeting with the elected trustees. So, these folks were the 21st. The trustees, I believe, are going to be the 28th. But if there's a schedule you want, get it through the chair, and we'll make sure it happens.
Who are the trustees, what are we talking
The
about?
Board of Library Trustees for the
Oh,
library.
that one, that's fine, I
Yeah.
can miss that, I wanna.
So no, we have not identified outside of the big groups, if you will. So as you talked about at your last meeting,
Golf.
we envisioned October 21st to be Board of Water, Wastewater Commissioners and Police. We've talked about Library because they're an elected board. We've talked about Golf and Fire because they're big items.
Yeah, golf and fire I'd like to be here for, so, and but
Sure.
that's, so those aren't the 28th.
So if you just get all
then
that
I'm
through your
good.
chair,
Yeah.
you'll tell me and we'll make sure we have those
Okay,
people at that time.
Cool, thank you guys.
Chair, make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
You do a better job than I do. Could I make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
Second?
Aye.
Aye.
Vote? Aye, thank you.
Thank you.
all very much.
That was great, thanks.
Thank you.
I gotta scoop, I gotta get all these.